All right, let's have a look at some of the brand new features in the release candidate number 2 for the AX8 Quantum 10 firmware. You can see here at the moment I have got one of the new features dialed up, which is this new Plexi 2204 amplifier, and I am using a custom cab IR that I made. I will put up a link to download this if you would like it. I think it sounds really good. This is the Plexi 2204 at the stock settings. This is my STR LJ1. Sounds like this. So that is at the stock settings. That's a Plexi 2204, and there are 2 more new amp models. If we go into the amp block effect type, you can see up here we have the Friedman 2018, which is modeled on a current release Friedman BE, as well as a BE45, C45 I should say. You can see that there. So the Friedman BE, that's just one of the modes. It's got a particular switch, which we've been sort of able to emulate before using a filter block, but now this is actually modeled off that exact channel. So while we're here, let's just quickly hear what the new amps sound like, because I really, really like this Friedman 2018 at the stock settings. It sounds amazing. And that is without any tweaking at all. I think that's a great, straight-up, heavy rock guitar sound. And then the C45 mode, this is slightly less bass-heavy, slightly more of a kind of classic Marshall kind of tone. And that was actually totally the wrong assessment. I shouldn't have said less bass heavy. I should have said more bass heavy, but also with a more mid-range focus. As you can clearly hear in that clip, I think I'm kind of confusing the two models around. But they're the brand new amps. And I really like that I can plug straight into this and set those at the stock settings and get a great sound. I won't say my favorite, but it's definitely one of my favorite amp models is the Atomica High model, and I'm a really big fan of just setting this one at the stock settings with this IR. This is like my perfect rock guitar sound. And one thing that I did notice coming from Quantum 9.04 to this 10 is that overall it's not brighter sounding, but it's almost like there's more clarity in the top end. So this amp just sounds amazing as is. Have a listen to this for a rock guitar sound. I found in general you can leave a lot more of the amps at the stock settings. So that's the Atomica, that's one of my favorites. The rectifiers sound really, really good. Just dialing back a little bit of mid and a little bit of bass at the stock settings. Yeah, this is happening, man. Again, with like minimal tweaking, you're getting a really great sound happening there. The other thing that I like as well, I'm running this amp and an ultra res IR, and it is only at 19% CPU, so there's plenty of room to stack on extra effects. In fact, if we do that, for example, let's put on a high quality reverb. Lots of people complain about not being able to run reverb, and you see that gets us to 50%. Chuck in a delay block, say we're building a sort of fully featured preset, that gets us to 57. Let's put on another drive block. I'll use I have this preset block, this workhorse block, which I think sounds really good. That's at 66. We can put a wah on there. Why not? I'm not actually going to use the wah at the moment, but just to show it off, let's put a phaser on there. We'll go with the script phase, script 90 in this case. And what else can we do? Let's throw in like a stereo flanger or something back here. I'll actually swap the order of that in the delay. There are some great blocks that Matt Piccone put on that do this stereo electric mistress thing, which I really like. You can get them on the Fractal forum if you look them up. And what else could we add here? What else could we put in front of the amp? Let's put, let me see if I can stack on a pitch effect. And that gets us to 86. So that's kind of pushing it. But that should still work. Let me put on like just whatever, fixed harmony down an octave. That should sound pretty cool. Where are we at? 86%. So that's pretty amazing. We can push the CPU a little bit harder there. Probably on the earlier firmware, you'd be sort of hitting the 90s and the reverb would be disabling and stuff like that. But I never need that many effects. But it is nice to know that if I wanted to build, instead of like a flanger, I'll put a multi-delay on, and instead of, I'll turn the drive block off because I don't need it. Something like that, I could build a big post-rock style preset with it, and maybe throw another delay in somewhere else if I wanted to, because why not? And that's running at 86% again, so you can kind of cram more into each preset. So that's a big improvement. So far we have these three brand new amps, I should say. We've got the CPU improvements, and my favorite thing about this at the moment is that, let's say we want to XY switch in a preset, and this has been a big point of contention with the AX8, that people have complained about the switching lag between XY states on an amp. So you want like a Fender on scene 1 and a Marshall on scene 2. Let's go ahead and do that. I'll dial up a Fender style amp. What should we use? Let's use this 59 bass guy because I think that sounds pretty awesome. This is the bass guy. Oh, that is a beautiful sounding amp. Just on the edge of breakup there. And we will go to the Y state, and I'm going to put this brand new Friedman BEC45. What I'm going to do is I'll set everything at noon on this one. Let's try that with a little bit more input drive. Sounds like this. Yeah, that is slamming. I love the sound of this amp. So let's do this. What I'm going to do is I'll play and I'll just XY switch between them, and we'll have a listen to the audio gap. So if I'm like slamming out a chorus on something like this. And there you go. I immediately noticed that when I fired up this release here, the RC2, I believe it is. It's maybe like the 8th beta firmware or something like that they've released for this, which is pretty awesome. And you can hear there, if you've watched any other AX8 videos on previous firmwares, you'll notice that there's quite a big switching lag when you XY switch between amps. And somehow they have got around it here. And now I think you can safely say that without having to use scene controllers, you can XY switch amps on the fly playing live with no real audio dropout, which is pretty awesome. You know, if you were playing like a and there's a very small gap there, obviously, but it's way better than before. So I don't know how they managed to kind of shoehorn that in there, but yeah. Kudos to Cliff and the whole team for doing this. It's a pretty monstrous sounding update. So yeah, that's kind of what's new with this firmware. We have the 3 new amp models, we have the faster XY switching, and a couple of models that I probably didn't give enough time on earlier firmwares I think sound better, like this 59 bass guy. I have never been a Fender guy when it comes to Fender amps. Obviously, you know, I love like a Fender Strat and a Tele and stuff like that. But let's dial up a twin, say this double verb, let's do the vibrato, and use these kind of, you know, bass around 3, mid around 3, treble around 6, stock settings. I love this sound. I think this sounds amazing. Which is wicked. And then you can set, you know, for example, the twin up as a pedal platform. One of my favorite overdrives in here, when I'm not using the Workhorse, which I really like, is the Blues OD. You turn the tone all the way off and you kind of get a real creamy, I shouldn't say creamy as in the sound of the band Cream, but, you know, if you're into the John Mayer thing, I'm playing like a Les Paul style thing, so there's going to be the worst John Mayer kind of thing ever. But, you know, that sort of modern, slinky, clean sound. Which I've never been super into pedal drives. I much prefer using the distortion of an amp. But I have to say, that combination of the Blues OD and the Twin is really doing it for me on this firmware. So that's kind of a new thing. Couple of other things. One of my favorite amp models is this USA C++. Oh, I love this amp so much. If you use similar settings there, crank the overdrive, I bring the master down a little bit, and you got to dive into the graphic EQ and kind of scoop it right out to make it sound the best. I generally go for these kind of settings, smash the mids up, give it a bit of 6600 too, and yeah, it's just a little bit clearer sounding and a little bit more dynamic as well, especially with super high gain, you know. You can ride the volume control on this firmware a lot better, I find. It responds even more like an amp. Not that 9 was bad, but this is, you know, it's one of those things. I didn't think they could make it better, and they clearly have. So there are a couple of my favorite amp models on this new firmware. One other thing that I think is really, really cool about it that I've sort of noticed is when you play around with these speaker compression controls, like, you know, get the speaker comp up to, say, 6, and increase the power supply sag. And actually, let's not do this on this amp model. Let's do it on a Plexi, because I think that's going to be a little handier. Well, let's hear it on this anyway, just for now. So. They don't make a huge difference on this because I don't have the master very high. But what I did want to mention was what I love to do is have the C++ set up like this for a rhythm sound, and then the same settings on the amp, but with the fat switch engaged on a Y setting for a solo sound. And it's on the earlier firmwares, it's been a bit of a bummer because, you know, there's that switching lag. So I'll turn the fat switch on over there. What we can do now is I could be playing a part and then go to play a solo and just easily switch without having any kind of, any noticeable switching gap, you know. So I love that about that, and I am probably going to use that in my main preset so that now all my solo tones can have the fat switch on. I don't have to sort of worry about timing the foot switch or anything like that. All right, like I said before, let's dial up a Plexi. Let's use this Plexi 2204, because why not? It's brand new. What I'm going to do is slam the master volume up. I'll turn the input drive down a little bit. And yeah, let's muck around with these supply sag controls. This is what it sounds like at stock setting. And as you can hear there, it's so dynamic on this amp. I love that, and I love the way the supply sag and the speaker drive interact with the master volume on there. It's even more noticeable. So, yeah, basically better power amp modeling, clearer tones, faster XY switching, using less CPU, and a bunch of the amps that I really love sound even better, and a bunch of amps that I maybe didn't give enough time of day to me on this firmware sound even better. So there you go. You can leave your comments and let me know what you think if you've tried the firmware. Please chime in with what you think. If you haven't tried the firmware, jump over to the Fractal Audio forum and you can download it there. I'll put a link in the video description. I'll put a link for a download for my IR so that you can try all of this stuff. And yeah, let me know what you think. Or if you think that I'm just totally being a shill and that it sounds exactly the same and that I'm an idiot, please let me know. I'd love to talk to you about it because it's always very easy to get excited with these things. But to me, there are some very noticeable improvements on this firmware. It's worth upgrading if you're an AX8 user. And if you're not an AX8 user, it might make you want to get one even more because I think it sounds amazing. If you enjoyed this video, please hit subscribe, and I'll see you guys very soon with some more vids.